Okay, so that sums up what typography is. And what I'm going to look at now is perhaps how you can use it in your designs for your product that you're actually doing. Now, back in the days when certainly I was at school and we was doing things like technical drawing, all this typography we had to draw by hand. There wasn't so much of computers and all the font types you've got now. Ways that you can get fonts? Well, there's loads of ways really. I'll just minimise my screen and just drag this in. There we go. Okay, so the first thing I've gone to here is famous fonts. So if you're looking for a specific font, things like Airwolf, these are a bit before your time, Babylon 5, Battlestar Galactica, typical 70s font there, Blackadder, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, things like this, Cops, it's a stencil. There are loads of ones there, and you can just literally flick through all the different types of fonts that they are, and people name them, so Powerpuff Girls, Roswell, Quantum Leap. Let's think of other things, the 18 perhaps. Oh, we've missed that one onto that one, so okay, let's have a quick look on T then, see what's on there. Oh yeah, Seacrest, Scooby-Dooby-Doo. Yeah, so we got all those sort of stuff in there, the old Star Trek. All sorts of really on there, and they're available to download, usually free of charge. So that's one thing you can look at. So if your shop is selling, I don't know, for example, things from the 70s or memorabilia, then what you could look at is fonts from the 70s. So I'm just going to close that one down a second. And here you've got, and this is just literally typing in fonts of the 70s into the search engine, and away we go. So you can see all the sort of things. Now with the 70s there was a lot of this sort of double line things, a bit like the Battlestar Galactica film we've just seen. Films of the day, of that period, tend to have these sort of fonts, and that's one way of looking at what sort of thing was available in the 70s. Another one they had in the 70s was a lot of this bubble writing, a lot of this curved writing onto things, and then it was things on record covers, things like Corner Shop. The band, they use a font very similar to this Superstar DJ from there. So we've got loads of these 70s colours, browns and oranges, loads of things really. That's a typical one for the 70s as well. And there just seems to be a lot of curves and a lot of extended sort of writing onto these. And all of these will have a font name, it's just finding out which font they are. So those are the ones of the 70s. Okay, moving further on then, getting a bit nearer to present day. Fonts of the 80s, exactly the same. Now this one here, you can see we was talking about kerning in the last clip. The kerning here is overlapped, so it's actually squashed the letters together, so there is no space between the letters. But what is interesting is the colours and how they actually blend across the top. Very similar to BT Open World, or how Virgin tend to do theirs with the images, very, very close together. Other things then, it was very geometric letters in the 80s. A lot of this stuff that was actually looked like metallic, to make things look modern, to make them look high-tech, to give you the impression of value, or making things look more expensive. And a lot of these sort of highlights on them as well, and shading onto there. And also a lot of these sort of highlighted lettering, because there was a lot of neon lights and things like that in the 80s, and so that's pretty typical of an 80s sort of font. And we had a lot of the computers in the 80s, home computers, so there's a lot of things relating to that. So you see a lot of these sort of numbers, sort of a bit like the 70s, but in there. Record covers, anything like that, are a way of showing you what was around at that period by looking at music in that period as well, because art movements tend to go through these periods. Simple stencil letters, stenciling, it's come through letter setting, that's on there. Again, this is quite typical of the 80s, and there used to be a lot of pop art sort of revival in the 80s there. So where we've got one here that looks like traditional, because they've got a serif font, think differently, or think different. Swatch, something that's a massive icon of the 80s. And so there's loads of things really from there. A lot of rock bands obviously use different types of fonts, and we're moving a bit more towards this electronical age that you tend to see from the 80s as it moves through. I'll close that one then, and then go to the 90s then. 90s is a bit of an eclectic period really, where we look back at things that have gone forward. There's no really defining typography of the 90s that stand out as such, and that's probably why I've looked now at what's in the 1920s. Well, obviously the art period of the 1920s, just come out the First World War. It was excuse me, it was more the Bauhaus and the Art Deco movement that sort of come out of there. So it was sort of leaving the Art Nouveau movement of the start of the century up to 1917, 1914, start of the war, into 1917. The Art Nouveau sort of period sort of phased out to a more geometric type style. So if you was doing something to do with that, or the Art Deco, like the Great Gatsby film that's coming out, I would imagine they'd be using Art Deco sort of type font on there. So there's loads really from the 1920s. Okay, so there's a lot of sort of research you can do on fonts, and you can do that quite easily just by surfing the internet onto that one as well. There are a lot of engines you can download, free fonts as well, like graffiti fonts or anything like that, but you've just got to bear in mind it's got to be something that suits what it is you're actually designing onto there as well. As I said, fonts are quite important really in what we do in typography, and you can use loads of different packages. This one's here is obviously what we're using is PowerPoint, but things like Serif Draw will have loads in, and you should also be able to pretty much, I would have thought, look at all the documents that you've got, so you can see the things we've got in there as well. And I actually have loads and loads and loads of fonts already saved onto my computer there as well. So I've got things like APM Font Viewer. This is free software that you can download, and what it does enable you to do is either to create your own font or to read all the other fonts that we've got in there. And if you need to install them, well, there's actually over 1,000, 1,400 sort of fonts that we've got here as well, and that's quite easy to do. And anyone that you want to choose, so for example, I don't know, if we've got a Star Wars one, so if I quickly look into Star Wars one, see if we can find that font. So what I'm looking for is something that's actually modern. Anything that resembles things like Roman or anything like that, you know it's going to have serifs on, so it's not going to be that sort of thing in there as well. Like I say, a lot of designers have their own sort of fonts in there as well, and they name it after different things. I think I've just double clicked onto that one. No, there we go. So, ooh, Satan Possessed. That looks a bit unreadable. Right, so let's see where we can go then. Right, SF is will be anything that's alt that hasn't got any sort of fonts on there as well. Well, sorry, fonts, serifs on there as well. So it's sort of like without your serifs, so that would be sans serifs. So we get all these sort of things down there. Planetary. Ooh, let's see what that one looks like. Wow, that looks a bit cool. Yes, there's absolutely loads of them, and you can spend quite a bit of time searching for the right font and justifying what font you're going to use. So you can see we've got all sorts of different ones in there. It's only a matter of time really before we find the one that we're after. Some of them aren't really that good, to be honest, but whoa. Oh, it's Trans Robotics, that sounds good. Yeah, so you can see where we're going with this anyway. So what you will need to do is find the right font that you've got. You can search the internet for the font that you need, and then hopefully when you design yours you'll be able to comment on the fonts, and that's pretty much what we're looking for.